Hello, welcome to Simply Raby. I'm your host, Ed Raby. This is the channel that asks the question, what is your moral philosophy and how did you discover it? And I do that kind of by telling you what my moral philosophy is and how I discovered it. Wow, I really did give myself a nice shiner there. Don't be alarmed, I did that to myself. Today I want to talk about what is the goal of the game of life. Now, back in the day when I was a kid, I used to play this game called The Game of Life. It's still around, by Milton Bradly. And I remember when you got to the end of the game and you're getting ready to retire in the game, you started to roll the dice. And if you got to the end, winning the game basically involved you had the most money. Now, you could also do other things like give it to chance and luck. Put all your stuff on two numbers, spin the thing, and if you got those numbers, I think you automatically won, or at least you vaulted into the first place position unless in case somebody else did. Now, if you didn't succeed in your roll of the fortune dice, you ended up in the place called some sort of cabin in the woods. Now, this is the old Game of Life. Now, if you look at the new versions of the Game of Life, I think they have like 3 or 4 retirement options, and you kind of figure that out. And they're a little bit nicer on it. But in this particular version of the game, I remember playing as a kid in the 70s. It had you retire to the woods and become a philosopher. Now, I always have found that this was the two choices at the time, and that was interesting. I mean, I don't know if anybody has like a memory of that, but that's what I remembered. And so when I looked at moral philosophy, it's like everybody has a moral philosophy, okay, and everybody has a life goal. Whether they fall into that life goal accidentally or they're very deliberately and on purpose. I believe you should be deliberately on purpose with your life goal, and your moral philosophy should be the result of taking some time to think about it and having it really genuinely guide your life. And so when I look at those two goals, my issue is I don't want to win the game of life if those are the two options, where I become the millionaire and sit on a pile of stuff till I'm dead, or I retire to a cabin in the woods and spend the rest of my days philosophizing. I hate to say it, that second option sounds more desirable to me and a lot more simple. I think for me, that would be the best. And so I was thinking about this about a year ago, and I'd made a deliberate decision at that point. I said, you know, Ed, you don't really need all the stuff. You don't really need all the things. Maybe it's time to go back to certain principles of your life and start to define them and get better at them. And so I have been kind of on this last year on a journey. And maybe that's part of the reason why I had such a hard time being a teacher. But the issue is, you know, how do you make a living as a philosopher in the 21st century? It's really hard. I mean, unless you write a book that's a bestseller or do something else, I don't know. How would you do that? And then I realized a lot of people are philosophers on YouTube. They share their own philosophy. And I did that for a while as the rabid atheist, but now I've kind of shifted gears. Atheism is kind of part of my philosophy of life, but dealing with religion and God is only a part of our life. We don't do that all the time unless you're some sort of dedicated fundamentalist where religion is 90% of your life day by day. You don't really spend a lot of time talking about your moral philosophy or having that religion as a major part of it. So, having discarded religion and belief in gods in general, I moved into more of okay, well, what are the building blocks of my moral philosophy? And then, is there a way to share that with other people? And I think there is, and that's why I've chosen this medium to kind of head forward with what I want to do. Moral philosophy. You know, I always, there's a fictional character, Mr. Dubois, in Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers. He teaches a class on the history and moral philosophy. And when you get the little excerpts in the book of Johnny Rico in that class, it's kind of cool where he forces you to look at history, look at moral philosophy, and look at them together. And, as I was teaching in high school, I said, that's the class I want to teach. Because I look at these kids and they're kind of wandering around and they don't really seem to have a goal or aim or objective. Like most adolescents, they just kind of are there. And it's like what a lot of my teenagers needed, as I was teaching social studies, in particular world geography, what they needed was somebody to throw out philosophical ideas of how to live their life and, okay, let's see if you can build your own moral philosophy of how you want to live. Because the alternative, folks, is to let kids basically fall into whatever moral philosophy they choose to discover. Now, that's fine, I suppose. Most people find their moral philosophy and their philosophy of life that way. But my issue is, okay, how do you define winning the game of life? How do you do it? Not what the world outside of you tells you that you need to be in order to be successful. Okay? Because religion will tell you different ways. Politics will tell you different ways. Society in general will tell you what it means to be a successful person at life. But have you picked that for yourself? What do you think is successful in life? And how are you going to pursue that? And so, for me, I'm still aiming for the philosopher in the woods as a better alternative than rolling the dice on the wheel, or as I live my life accumulating, looking at everything I do in life as a way to accumulate the most wealth so I can have the most wealth at the end of the game, compared to who exactly. The reason why I don't think those other two alternatives are very great, one depends on luck, and I don't have any, and most of you can probably relate. The other one depends on what? You gain, somehow you're the winner because you accumulate a lot of stuff. I hate to tell you this, but if you spend any time studying philosophy for any length of time, I don't think you're going to find that that's a very satisfying ending. Because the one thing that everybody reminds you of is death. And this is what attracted me to Stoicism as a beginning philosophy. Right now, I am reading a book, How to Be a Stoic. And I'm going to actually talk about that on this channel from time to time, my progress in that book. And tomorrow's video will probably be why I study books rather than I just read them. And studying takes a little bit longer, but I get a lot more out of it. But the reason that I was attracted to Stoicism is because you have this simple goal of how am I going to face my death in Stoicism. And so they have kind of a two-part thing in Stoicism, at least as far as I understand it so far, where you have, on the one hand, how do I live a happy life? And the other is, how do I face my death? Okay, and those two things are what kind of encapsulates Stoicism. There's a lot more to it. A lot of people get a bad idea about Stoicism. Well, that means you don't have any feelings, or they take Mr. Spock from Star Trek and they think that that's an idea of a Stoic. But Stoics are interested in having a happy life, and happiness is kind of an emotional thing. It's a sense of personal satisfaction. And if you're going to have the goal of having a happy life, does that necessarily involve accumulating a whole bunch of stuff and sitting on it while you're dying? Not necessarily. Okay, and you can find yourself in all kinds of different circumstances. When you read some of the Stoic writers of the past in the ancient world, it's interesting all of their backgrounds. I mean, you have Epictetus, who was essentially a slave who was freed by his master to go do stuff. We don't even know his flippin' name, his real name. And then we have the other guy, Marcus Aurelius, who's also a notable Stoic, who's emperor of Rome. So in between that is a lot of people that have followed that philosophy and found their own personal joy and happiness in it. No God required, no anything required. And I think that's the thing that attracted me to Stoicism. And then, of course, there's along with that, trying to find the other things that give you happiness. And over time, I've become a much more of a minimalist as far as possessions, and there's all kinds of connotations with minimalism, and one of the false one I think is you've got to follow this decor. I think you can be a minimalist and still have a joyful place to live and a less cluttered place to live that allows you to enjoy life more. Along with that, I've recently discovered essentialism, focusing your life on the most necessary, most essential thing that you can do with it. Okay, instead of having all these things that you're trying to do. I think one of the great problems that most human beings have is the ability to say no and to focus on what's essential to their life and only say yes to the things that build that essential thing. Okay, and that's kind of the interesting life focus. You know, I've been a follower of the Nine Noble Virtues since I left Christianity, which is a pagan philosophy. But I think following different, you know, what does it mean to be courageous? What does it mean to be self-reliant? Does it mean to be industrious? You know, and constantly thinking about, okay, am I being industrious right now? Am I being hospitable right now? Am I acting with honor? These are all things that kind of cross over with all the stoicism, the minimalism, and the essentialism. What does that mean? And today I just wanted to give you the understanding that it's my goal of life. If the game of life, is the board game, is the example, I want to lose. I don't want to be the guy that has to go through the entire game of life struggling to get all the stuff so I can sit on it at the end of my life and not be happy about it one bit the entire time. I don't want to be the person that's, you know, just kind of going through and hoping I win at the roll of the dice at the end. I want to be the guy that deliberately says, you know what, I want to be the philosopher. I want to have the cabin in the woods, be a philosopher, and retire happy and live happy. Happy, you can't be happy all the time, but I want to live in a positive state of mind where I focus on the things that really matter to me, where I only have the things that I need to make me personally happy, and I pursue a philosophy of life that is the best way to live my life. That means that you got to pull out of the game. Or if you stay in the game, your whole object is to get to the end and say, yeah, I don't have any money. I'm not going to trust the roll of the dice. I'm going to just camp over here in this little cabin in the woods. That's my goal. But you know what? I'm happy about it. Losing at the game of life sometimes is winning. Well, thank you for coming by, and I just wanted to pontificate a little bit about, you know, kind of what the goal of life is. I mean, if you have some comments or some ideas about that, I'd be glad to hear them. The comment section is always open for your comments. I appreciate every comment because it allows me to get some interaction. The channel's fairly young at that point. I think this is my third video. So if you see this later in the backlog, be free to comment until such time as the channel gets big enough where me responding to comments becomes interesting. But thank you once again for stopping by. Make sure you like, you share, you subscribe, you get that notification bell so you get notified when new videos drop. I'd greatly appreciate it. Everything that you do helps the channel grow and reach my goals. So thank you very much. And if you're wondering what that first goal is, got to get to 1,000 subscribers. And, you know, once you get to 500 subscribers, you can have a community tab and you can start having memberships and things at certain points. And those are the goals I want to get to so I can really start to get the channel rolling. So thank you once again. If this is your kind of content, be sure to subscribe. And once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm Ed Raby, and this has been Simply Raby, and I'll see you next time.